Hey, everyone. Welcome to the latest podcast episode. This is your host, Terry Knight, and I have an amazing guest standing right in front of me. Her name is Laurie Barkman, and she just has a long portfolio, guys. I'm going to go through it, but she's a star. Former CEO of a $100 million revenue company that was acquired by Fortune 50. She's been seen on Forbes, Yahoo, Finance, and she has a great podcast called Succession Stories, which is a top 2.5% globally. So check that out. Best-selling author as well for the Business Transition Handbook. I'm going to talk about that as well. And like Laura, you just do amazing things. So I appreciate you for coming on and shedding some light.
Thanks, Terry. I'm really glad to be with you today.
Cool. Thank you so much. So let's just get to it because people are probably like, wow, Lori has a great resume. Let's get to it. Just let everyone know who you are and we kind of go from there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the Business Transition Sherpa. And what that means to me, what that means to my clients is that I guide them to create life-changing succession stories. And what I do and how I do it is we work on making their company more valuable, transferable, and attractive so that they can maximize value when they're ready. And then the other part of it is the emotional part, and that's the letting go part.
Yeah.
And I do that as an advisor, but then I'm also a mergers and acquisitions advisor. So I come at it with the lens of the buyer, which is really helpful and I think distinctive in this space, that it isn't just about the transaction. There's an IQ, EQ part of it. And in terms of creating value and the transaction, I've got a lot of experience there. So I try to put it all together.
That's pretty cool. Cool summary as well. But let's get started with you being a former CEO of a $100 million company. Um, what was your role there when you first started? Like, what was the whole background on that?
Yeah, I was hired in from the outside as part of a long-term succession plan. They had a planned succession for this subsidiary. It was about 10% of the total revenue of the business. It was a third generation privately held company, and my boss was the chairman. And at the time, he was in his 60s, and the company was probably like 100 and 120 years old. And what happened from there, it was really exciting going through the whole recruitment process to be CEO as a first time CEO. So getting that green jacket, if I can use that as a visual, was really exciting. And I imagined that I was going to be at this company for 20 years. I was so excited to be part of this long term vision, but it didn't turn out that way. It was
Mhm.
a 3 year tenure. And the reason why is because midway through in that 3 years was a pretty big transaction. The company, not just my unit, but the whole company was acquired by a global transportation and logistics company. And it was an incredible experience because there was a whole team of us that knew about the deal, but we couldn't take our foot off the gas on running the business and keeping things moving. At the same time, we wanted to, in terms of the deal, making it happen, we were working hard on that. So it was a very stressful time. It was kind of a whirlwind when the deal closed, and so myself and the other executives who became part of the new entity, going through the integration was also quite an experience. And yeah, I mean that was really the whirlwind. I mean, it was 3 years of very intense period of time, and I learned so much. I mean, it was very compressed, but just to have a front row seat to how a global company has an acquisition playbook, it was pretty fascinating.
That's so pretty and cool. Like, I mean, just to experience that as a CEO and just going through that whole process. You mentioned like compressed, everything was just so compressed for 3 years. What are a couple of things that you took away from that job that you're like, wow, this is a big game changer?
Oh gosh, there's so many things.
Yeah.
One of the things on the recruitment process is that I was an outside candidate and there were some inside candidates, and one of the inside candidates ended up being my direct report, and that was very difficult from the start. And I knew I knew coming in about that situation. I also had a feeling it was going to be difficult. It was. Um, there were some CEOs I had talked to at the very beginning and told them confidentially about this situation, and their advice was, you got to let him go soon, like now. But I had just
Oh,
started, right? So it was a real conundrum of what do you do when a key person on your team is going to stab you in the back.
wow.
So that was really difficult managing through that. because then it ended up cascading not only from him, but to some of his key people. That was probably the biggest challenge outside of some, customer and business challenges that we always face. But when you know that there's kind of a Judas on your team, and it's obvious, and it's bifurcating, it was really stressful.
Oh wow. Well, how do you handle that though? Because I have my fair share of the same thing, so I kind of understand that. And instead of letting them go, I mean, this is just me, my opinion. I just work through it. Like I just work through it. I try to be the best person, leader, or whoever to the individual people and just show an example and just kind of ignore the noise, even though it's very difficult and it kind of is just in your face. It's so difficult.
Yeah, it was difficult. My strategy was to do that, to tough it out, to try to recruit him on my side, so to speak. And,
Hmm.
I knew we were never going to be best friends, but if he could respect me
Yeah.
and respect what we were trying to do, that was my goal. I maybe got half of that. I'm not sure. um, and then the other strategy I had was to kind of enlist the support of his direct reports and their direct reports. So kind of the skip level, um, of really building a base of support from the ground up. And because I knew it wasn't going to come from him top down. So I figured if there was enough, and there was a sizable team. So I knew if there was enough people on the team who were like, hey, let's give her a chance. What she's talking about, what she's listening to us, she's responding and trying to be strategic. Let's dive in. So for example, I brought a strategic planning process to our, our, our division, and was very inclusive about it. We had a core team, a core operating team. And then I decided that it was important to bring in high potentials and sort of the skip level inclusion, so that there was an alignment on what we were doing and why we were doing it. And then I needed these people to execute. And there was not a question of, well, where are we going? And what are we doing? And, oh, I wasn't part of that and not feeling part of it. And that was, I think that was a really big momentum driver, for people to feel part of. And it wasn't just me kind of with my, crazy ideas. It was everybody's ideas and what we all felt was important.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's cool. That's very important. What was your day to day look like as a CEO anyway? Like I kind of got an idea, but everyone's different.
I usually would check in on whatever data I had from the previous day, looking at sales numbers and things like that. I would always spend time kind of walking the floor, and we were in a corporate environment. So I would walk around and, just sort of say hello to people and check in. And then from there, it was a lot of meetings. For me, it was a lot of meetings. I would say probably 50% were my peers and the executives. The other half would be, in my team meeting with my direct reports, or I also, again, did those skip level meetings, and I would meet with others so that they were having a FaceTime with me. I also took the time for developmental dialogues, so that started to fill the calendar. After it was an open invitation. If people wanted to talk with me once a quarter or once a month about their career and what they're working on, I had an open door policy for that. And so I encouraged them to schedule time. I wasn't going to chase them. Um, so there were some people that took advantage of that also. And then I try to be customer facing, so we would do customer surveys every quarter and try to get net promoter score type of, data. So there was a consistency to that, but I try to stay at the strategy level and be, impactful in with my time, working on team oriented things, working on client oriented things, and trying to grow the business.
Okay, cool. I like that part you mentioned about being an open door because I think a lot of people are afraid of the CEO and like, oh my gosh, like what should I do? Should I talk to her? Should I not? Should I? And I think that's important when you're in a business. So that's pretty cool that you did that.
Yeah, I mean, just to literally take that metaphor, realistically, the office that I occupied was a pretty decent space, and there was existing furniture. The way it was set up, you had to peek in, look to the left to see if the CEO was in the office. So I decided to reconfigure. I wanted different furniture. I wanted to kind of have a different vibe. And I reconfigured so that if you looked in the door, you would see me. I was literally sitting in front of the door. And I hope that it conveyed that I was interested in people kind of, talking to me. And I
Hmm.
mean, part of it too was my office was on the way to the bathroom. So if I was in, they could say hello. No, it wasn't like I was keeping track of anybody, but it made it easier, I think. And I wanted to convey an openness and kind of a friendly environment that, hey, yeah, I'm different, but it's all good. Let's, let's be on the same team.
I love it. I love every bit of it. What does it take though to really help a business like drive revenue? Like, what is that? Because everyone hits like a wall, right? And they have to figure out how to get to the next level. So how were you able to incorporate that with that company?
This company had a pretty interesting service niche, and I think it's just like any business. If you can figure out what pain points your customer or clients have, and you can provide a solution for that, it can be a momentum generator. So in our space, we were in the reverse logistics space, which was part of the side of retail that you never see. Most people think about new cartons and boxes and things getting shipped from a warehouse to different stores. Our process handled the other side of that world, which is what do you do with all the returns, damages, overstocks that the store physically can't handle anymore, or the online warehouse wants to continue to purge inventory. And so we had a business model where part of it was we were market makers for that inventory, and the other side of the business was a service model. So we would get leases and staff warehouse for these trucks to come in, and then we would process the inventory and organize it and then batch it so it would resell, whether it was in categories. So I used to say, we used to sell truckloads, pallets, cartons, and single
Oh my
items. I mean, we
God.
had the whole thing. So we did a very large business to business. And then we also had a smaller business to consumer business online. So yeah, it really it ran the gamut. But I think for any business, I think the key thing is just knowing who your target customer is and what it is you're trying to solve for them.
That's so cool. That's what everyone says that I've talked to. Literally the same exact thing. So that's pretty cool. You guys stay aligned with that stuff. Um, the business transition Sherpa. So now you help business owners do the same thing, make it look pretty, and sellable, all that good stuff in between. Um, what do you think the number one thing business owners lack when you're involved in that process? When you first help them out and get them onboarded?
When I first get onboarded, it's funny talking about pain points. I probably can, just elaborate a little bit more. A
Hmm.
lot of times business owners are in their own heads. It's a lonely place to be a CEO. It's a lonely place to be a business owner. And you might be able to talk to your spouse, you might be able to talk to peer groups, but you never really get to that level of depth to spend the time. And I find that the number one thing people just kind of want to get it off their chest, like what is it that they've been contemplating? And ultimately, my value add is helping them find clarity on some of these really big decisions that they're trying to make. And so the process, once I know that they have pain points they want to solve, and B, they're coachable. They know they don't have all the answers. Then an engagement starts with data. So a lot of times business owners have no idea what their business is worth. You can't go to, the golf course and talk to a buddy and learn what they sold their company for and think that yours is the same. It's just like having a house, right? You might have the same house in the same neighborhood, but if you've renovated the basement and you have a hot tub and your kitchens and bathrooms are new, your house is going to sell for a different price than your neighbor's house. And it's the same thing in a company. So the one watch out is, don't just guess and don't just hope, like find out. And so I have tools that I use in my kind of getting started package where, yeah, let's set up some baselines. Let's set up some quantitative baselines and we can measure from there. We can set some goals and a roadmap from there. And that's, I think, really, really valuable for people because everybody just kind of wants to know, well, where do I get started? How do I get started? What do I do? And again, that swirling in your head thing. And so I also help them to not kick the can. Don't be a can kicker. You can't do exit planning when you're exiting. It's too late. So I help
Hmm.
them understand what is the overall process of creating value and also letting go, right? So in the beginning, in an engagement, I always spend time on personal readiness and personal transition and transition mindset. We don't spend time on it every week or every month because it's one of those important, not urgent things until it is urgent. But I don't want to put it last for that reason, right? So I do work on it first with them and build from there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you mentioned some tools you use for onboarding. Is there something in particular that can help
Yeah,
people out
I
to
have a
kind of?
couple of tools. Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is, again, like a bundle. When people work with me on the advisory side, I do a personal readiness assessment, quantify where they are on 4 different drivers that can help influence whether or not they experience a transition with regret or excitement. The other is a business valuation and assessment across different key drivers of value. And what's great about that in that tool, I can also do what if scenario planning, which is another great, I think, a great scenario planner. Again, it's not just us making stuff up. We're using a system to quantify. And the valuation beyond the system, right? That's a software package saying, hey, here's based on your data inputs, here's what this system thinks your value is, which is great. I think it's one data point. The other is as a mergers and acquisitions advisor, I do valuations. And so I have access to other data and I put it all together in a way that I think is very comprehensive. So again, back to the home selling analogy, when you're selling your house, you want to have comps and you want to have examples of what other companies have done in your space. And so having that data is also pretty strategic to understand what other transactions have been done and use that in the data set for determining, where are you today and where do you think you should be.
Okay, cool. I love those tools. Have you seen a case with clients or just business owners? They're not ready in all levels, right? Their books may not be organized as right. They may have some structural issues in the business. Like, do you help with that type of fundamentals and getting that back on track, or?
Yeah, I'll point it out. I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm not a CPA. So if
Yeah.
their books are really a mess, I will work to find them a service provider, who has this particular specialty. I have 20 plus years of marketing, but I'm not going to do marketing campaign planning with them. So I try to stay at the 20,000 foot level and make sure they have the resources and support they need. I have a
Hmm.
pretty deep and wide Rolodex. So what I try to do is just match up, if they need an attorney or they need a wealth advisor, they need, you name it, it can be sales support or marketing and all of those things. So I don't try to be everything to everyone. I try to be kind of like, the CEO whisperer and trying to help
Hmm.
them see what it is that they are not seeing.
What they're missing, and that's important, right? If they're coachable, because they have to hear this, and some people may be very stubborn and just think they know everything. So that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And if they think they know everything, then they're not a fit for me. That's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
okay.
Exactly. You mentioned you have 20 plus years of marketing.
Yes.
Um, I want to kind of pick your brain on that one. Like, what do you think is the key thing people are missing when it comes to marketing, especially when you've managed $100 million company?
Yeah, and I've also worked in startups, so I think I have an
Mm.
interesting perspective on that. And one of the fun facts in my bio, I know you were joking saying it's a long bio. It is. I guess that means I'm old. No, but one of the things that I also do is I'm an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship, and so I've kind of orbited the world of entrepreneurs for a long time. And I think the main thing, go back to what I said early on in this call, is having a perspective of your target market and what problems they have. So one of the things that I've seen a lot, especially with software tech type of applications, is they have cool tech, but that's it, right? And so then they're selling the features, they're not selling the benefits, and they're not really sure who they're selling it to. So there's a lot of examples of tech companies that have kind of tech founders, and then they'll bring in some marketers and salespeople who help them shape those messages and refine. And I think that's really great. That's a natural tendency to, I don't want to call it a pivot because it's not. It's really this continuous refinement based on market information. The other type of entrepreneur is going to be more mindful of that at the start if they had, some sort of experience in the industry and they've seen firsthand a particular problem that they're trying to solve. Maybe it was something that they experienced. And so there's a couple of concepts here that I think are important. One is product market fit or service market fit, right? This is that dynamic that we've been discussing on the show about how do you figure out the market fit, the pain points, and then hopefully get growth from there. The other is founder market fit. And I've seen that. It's really powerful, especially for a company that is intending to get backed by a venture fund. Venture funds, a lot of times they want to see results, but they also want to see that the founders are in it to win it and that they're really motivated. What's motivating them? Why are they doing it? And so this founder market fit, the story behind the story can also be very powerful.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. That's actually good points. A lot of people don't take the time to do that stuff. To acquire a company of any size, right? How long does that process take from beginning to end?
Well, I have a client that just went through this and it was on the shorter end. They had
Hmm.
identified the client themselves, and I was helping facilitate some door opening and door closing, so to speak. And um, that process, let's see, end to end, was probably 6 months. And I think that's on the shorter end. Um,
Hmm.
it can certainly be longer with a more complex business. But the irony is a lot of times these transactions for really, really big companies happen much faster than small companies. And I think a
Oh.
reason why it can drag longer is when diligence just keeps taking forever, right? So as the buyer's going through the financial information, the legal, they're finding issues, they're asking questions, they need more information, and it just drags out. So I think on the short end, 6 months. I think on the longer tail, it's going to be, it could be 12 to 18.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a pretty
And it
big
also
gap.
has to do with how quickly you find the buyers and they find you. So it
Mm.
depends on the process. In this in this world, there's lots of ways that buyers and sellers can come together. As a mergers and acquisitions advisor, if I'm representing the seller, I'm trying to bring people together at the same time so that we can consider multiple offers. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's just sequentially.
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually true. It's funny because you go to websites like Biz Buy Sell and all these other websites. Is that kind of like the go to kind of sell a business, or is there?
I think biz by
Um,
sell is useful for companies of a certain size and not so much complexity. There's always got to be a hub, right? So it's good that they exist. I find most commonly these are businesses that, and it's not always the case, but they're on the lower end of the lower middle market. They might be $1 million or under in revenue, or 2 million and under in revenue. So it
mhm.
is an opportunity for sure because you want to get eyeballs and you want to be found. So it's kind of like the search engine. It's such a fragmented market, right?
Yeah.
There's no kind of MLS equivalent on the real estate side for businesses for sale. I know everyone's sort of thinking that's an opportunity. It's just really challenging. Buyers want the pocket list, just like a buyer wants a pocket listing for a house. Buyers want no competition for a business, so a lot of acquisition entrepreneurs are doing outreach on their own to say, "Hey, I'm interested in buying your business," and so business owners are getting inundated and they're tuning out. So that's where a firm like ours, when we pop in, it's like there's a legitimacy to it. We're running a playbook, and if I on the flip side, if I'm doing outreach, saying, "Hey, I'm representing a client for sale. Do you want to take a look? This is the process." They know that there's, something substantive behind that because we had to prep it. A lot of times for businesses for sale on Biz by Sell, they could be for sale by owner, right? And so you still don't know kind of what's behind the curtain, again, which could then lead to the process just taking a lot longer because they're not really as packaged as they could be.
Hmm. Yeah, I bet. Do you think? I mean, I know it kind of varies, but is there a certain business that does well versus others as far as being acquired, packaging it up and then reselling?
Well, I think the companies that prepare, and make the time to prepare, will put themselves ahead of the rest. And that's regardless of whatever kind of business you have. I think if you have a business that's ready to sell at any time, that's the standard, and think about
Mhm.
that for a moment. It's like, wow, well, if some little bluebird comes knocking on my door and they say that they're interested, then isn't that a good thing, right? To have a well run company that could sell at any time. I think
Yeah.
that's a standard we can compare ourselves against. As far as other businesses, I guess one way to look at it would be when I talk to private buyers, so acquisition entrepreneurs, people who might have a search fund behind them of some investors, and they all share, okay, here's the deal criteria I'm looking for, and they all share the same criteria. So I kind of chuckle, but it's basically, I mentioned this assessment that I have, and it's across 8 value drivers. One of the core is financial performance, right? So do you have a business that's performing and delivering EBITDA of a certain size? So I think that's the first determinant across the board. There are some strategics, there are some private equities, there are some private buyers who just have minimum thresholds of the size of business they're looking for.
Mhm.
They might make exceptions, but and it's not a hard and fast rule, but I'll just say in general, it depends, right? So some of them say, well, it needs to be at least 1 million in EBITDA. Some will say, oh, it could be 500,000 EBITDA. Others will say 3 million EBITDA. So it just depends. I think the other main thing is how that EBITDA is created. So many buyers have a preference for recurring revenue business models
Yep.
because
Yep.
it's more predictable.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Laurie, let's talk about your book. Your book, best-selling Amazon bestseller author, The Business Transition Handbook. What is that book about?
It is just like it sounds. I want business owners to have a perspective of what is business transition and how is it helpful for them. And I chose the word handbook on purpose because how do you hack the book? Well, I want you to write in it, dog ear it, work on the exercises that are presented. And it's how to avoid the pain and how to get the gain, right? So the subtitle is purposeful that way. It's how to avoid succession pitfalls, right? That's the pain. We don't want the pain. And then the gain is how do we create valuable exit options? So the book really walks through both. And the way it was funny as I was writing it, and I didn't like what I had. So about halfway through, I scrapped it. And
Really?
my
Oh
epiphany
wow.
was, we've been talking about it all morning. Like, I didn't think that I was doing a good job for the reader. I tried to put myself in their shoes and I said, what do they care about? Well, they want to avoid stepping in something, right? They want to avoid what I call tripwires. So how do we spot them? How do we avoid them? And that's essentially how I ended up laying it out, was starting with personal readiness, personal transition mindset, financial readiness, and then focusing on the business side for the remainder of the book. And ultimately, it covers a process, but I'm taking them through the process the whole way, which is how do you create a strategic transition plan that you can use, and you don't have to put it on Front Street with your management team until you're ready, but it's something that you can use as a tool throughout your journey as an entrepreneur. I recognize that not every business is in the same place, right? So some folks feel, oh yeah, this is 10 years away. Perfect. My book is perfect for you. If you're a startup and you're on day one, I would say, okay, probably not the book for you, but
Mm,
pick it up in 2 or 3 years.
mm,
I envision that entrepreneurs who are founders are reading my book soon-ish. I recognize they got a lot of things to figure out, and they're not necessarily beginning with the end in mind. That said, if you are taking a business school class of entrepreneurship and you think you're going to get venture funding, you bet that those venture firms are going to ask you what your exit plan is. So it's kind of this weird irony that there's so many businesses in the US that don't have an exit plan or a succession plan of ownership. Yet we're teaching in the business schools for startups that they need to have that. So, there's like $13 trillion of businesses in the U.S. that are going to have some sort of transition in the next 10 years. That's a crazy big number, and it's
yeah.
scary to think that many, many, many of them of that value do not have a plan.
It's like the whole 5, 10 year exit goal. Like, it's all kind of standard when you have a business, but I think it's just a lack of making the time and effort to have that in place for a lot of business owners. How long did it take you to write the book? You mentioned you wrote a little bit of it, you scrapped it, but after
Yeah.
you kind of revised it, like how long did that take you?
Well, end to end, it was about a year and a half because of that midway pivot. So it probably would have taken me a year if I really
Hmm.
sort of focused on it. And I think the podcast ended up being an amazing element to the book. I've gotten such nice feedback on it because the way I ended up using the show at the time I was writing the book, I think I had recorded like 130 episodes or something. So I had
Oh
a
wow.
lot of, and I had all the transcripts. So it was a lot of really rich information. And I was able to kind of be ninja with it where, oh, I need something on this point. And I could go back in the archive and find something, this, random paragraph or two that just fit perfectly. And so some of the nice feedback that I've gotten on Amazon reviews and so on is that people feel like I'm talking with them, because there's excerpts from the show. It's like little mini interviews that are included in the chapters. So it's kind of like a how-to mini MBA, if you will,
Mhm.
meets my show, and meets these conversations and real life examples that people can get their head around.
That's so cool. And where can people find your book? I mean, other than Amazon, is it in other places, Barnes and Noble, stuff like that, or?
It's online and on Amazon and on my website, just as a gift, Terry, to your listeners. If they are interested in getting a free digital copy, they
Ooh,
can go to my website, thebusinesstransitionSherpa.com, and go to, it's in the top nav. It says book. You can't miss it. So if they click on book, they'll go to my book page and they can download a free digital copy. So I just ask
awesome.
that if they read the book and enjoy it, that they go to Amazon and leave a review. Um, hopefully 5 stars.
Yes, guys, leave a 5 star. This is a book you need if you have a business. You need this for exit plan. Like I want to take a look at it too. So that's our plan too, to grow our business and have an exit plan at the end. So that's pretty cool that you have that, and it's for free, guys. I mean, you can't beat that. Um,
If you want a
look,
hard
look,
copy, you can get it at Amazon, of course.
of course, I like to read hard copies as well. I'm kind of in between both, but I think the physical book helps people out sometimes because maybe when you're reading it, you have a place like a bookmark, and it kind of makes you mentally say, okay, I'm kind of going through it. So you keep going and going. So that helps me at least.
Well, I wanted to
Um,
mention too one more thing about
mhm.
it. I think that people learn in different ways, just like you're saying. Some are
Yeah.
visual and some are auditory, and they can listen to it, and that's great. Um, but that's why I've created a course from the book,
Mm.
and it's called Endgame Entrepreneurship. And it takes the course and it amplifies it even more because
Wow.
I'm giving all these exercises and tools and everything. So if people want to learn about the course, that's also on my website. And it's next level. I think there's nothing like it out there.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. So we got a course, guys, a free ebook or paperback. That is, I've never heard of that. That's pretty cool. Wow. Okay. Lori, what do you have kids?
I do.
You do? And how old and what's their names?
22 and 19.
22 and 19. Okay. So they're of age. They're kind of, well, they're adults now. So I like to ask this question to amazing guests like you guys because you guys are so successful in so many different ways. Um, I guess, what would you want to teach your kids? I mean, they're of age now, but what did you want to pass on to them so they can be successful in life and in business or whatever they do?
Confidence is the number one thing. I think people
Mm,
with confidence can take steps forward even if they haven't walked in that space before.
okay, that sums it up. I like that one. I like that one. What's your plan for the rest of the year for 2024 and
I'm
beyond?
creating a content platform, as you might have garnered from this conversation. It started with the podcast 4 years ago, Succession Stories. The book came out last year. This year, the course, and I'm going to continue to try to reach as many entrepreneurs as I can on their journey to help them create life-changing succession stories. And that's what I'm really excited about, is sort of democratizing access to this content. It's one of the reasons why, of course, I would love to sell more books on Amazon, but look, it's not necessarily about that, right? If I can get the book in more people's hands, and ultimately, one of the other things I want to foster is a community of end game entrepreneurs. And I think I finally feel like I have the platform to do that, bringing people together, to ask questions of each other, be a peer network for each other. And then for me, as a way to serve many, at the same time, I'll still do signature, VIP advisory and M&A and things like that. But I'm trying to broaden out the access through mastermind groups and, this community that we're creating.
Oh, that's awesome. Guys, you got to check that out. That's coming soon. Um, what do you like to do for fun, Lori, on your
Well, I
spare
try to
time?
be active, so hiking, walking, tennis, and there's a platform tennis game we call paddle, which is, so I guess, racket sports. Winter, if we get snow where I am, which is not always, but if we get snow, I like to do cross country skiing.
Mm.
Things like that. I like travel. My pets, I had a cute little dog, so I like to walk them and just be outside. And my husband and I just got a brand new grill, so we've been learning how to grill, like all
Oh,
this
nice. Yeah.
rotisserie and smoking the meat, and so the grill is now a new hobby for the spring.
Yeah, grilling is awesome. Do recommend that. Lori, thank you so much for coming on. I just have one last question I'd like to ask all guests, and I can never remember it, but what keeps you going every day when you want to give up?
I think I've created a sense of patience in my entrepreneurial life. I didn't become an entrepreneur till I was in my 50s. And I think with that comes a sense of time and space that, look, I'm not in a rush as I was in my 20s and 30s to achieve this quote unquote milestone, because I did achieve that milestone in my 40s. And it gave me a perspective of, oh, okay, well, it isn't about the goal, it's about the journey, right? And so I think that that's where I am now, and I'm very comfortable with that.
Cool. I love it. And I think it's kind of important for like women. I think you're a great model for that as well. Because I think any woman could be like a CEO and just any type of level. What does it take to be a CEO anyway, as an overall function or job title, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's really complex. Um, when I was interviewing, I tried to do what I always do, which is research. And I
Hmm.
couldn't find that many articles about interviewing for CEO jobs, which is kind of funny. But one article I did find talked about strengths, motivations, and fit. And I apply that to any interview, frankly. It isn't just a CEO interview. So anytime I
Hmm.
talk to a young person like my nephews or my nieces or my kids, my own kids, I just share this, this framework of strengths, motivations, and fit. Any question you get, like if you said, Lori, what are your weaknesses? That's a strengths question, right? And so if you're prepping for, well, why am I right? Why am I right for this job? Why am I right to be a CEO? And so when I was prepping for my interview, I was really trying to be mindful of all those categories. Why do I want this? What's motivating me? Why do I think I'm a fit? And, what am I bringing to the table to add value? And here's the other thing that I think people who aspire for certain roles need to be mindful of, whether it's CEO or whatever it is. Why should a company hire you versus anyone else? There's risk in every single candidate. And ultimately, what is a company trying to do? They're trying to hire the best fit candidate with the least risk, right? We all have risk. So, what are those things about your CV, your resume, the experience you bring to the table that helps them see you in a way that, yeah, that person can add value and probably least risky than these other candidates?
Well said. I love that. I just kind of always want to envision what you guys think of because it's a whole different level compared to everyone else. So that's a good way to put it. Guys, you heard it first here. The Miss Laurie Barkman in the house. Please check out her book, free, and her course, all that good stuff. I have the links below. And Laurie, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Terry, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
All right, guys, to the next episode. Peace out.